and Merry Christmas.
Merry Christmas.
And speaking of Christmases, one of the things every Christmas that always gets our attention is when the children do their Christmas pageant. But there was one Christmas pageant that was presented by a class of 4-year-olds that was an event to remember. It began with 3 Virgin Marys marching out onto stage. Of course, as they stood there, they were all waving to their parents. It's not every Christmas pageant that has 3 Virgin Marys, but over the years, this school had acquired 3 Mary costumes. And so, quite naturally, the script was revised. This gave a chance for more children to be involved and kept down the squabbling of who got the starring roles. There were 2 Josephs who walked behind the 3 Marys, and then 20 little angels came out. They were dressed in white robes and they had huge gauze wings. They were followed by 20 little shepherd boys, dressed in burlap sacks, and they carried an array of objects that were supposed to be shepherd's crooks. And it was at this point that the problem occurred. During the dress rehearsal, the teacher had used chalk to draw circles on the floor to mark where the angels were supposed to stand, and crosses to mark the place where the shepherds were supposed to stand. The problem came that the children had practiced with their regular clothes on. So on the night of the pageant, the angels came out, walking with their big, beautiful gauze wings, and they stood on their circles. And the wings were so big that they covered the crosses. So when the time came for the shepherds to find their place, they didn't know where to go because the angels took up all their space. And there was one little boy who became extremely frustrated and angry over the whole experience. He finally spied his teacher behind the curtains and shocked everyone when a loud stage whisper that everyone could hear, he said, "Because of these blankety-blank angels, I can't find the cross." Now, he didn't say blankety-blank, but we're in church. But I wonder if that can happen sometimes. You know, the romantic elements of Christmas, the shepherds, the wise men, the angels, the star in the east, not to mention the commercialism of Christmas, have a tendency to obscure the most important meaning of it all, and particularly the message of the cross. And this is why it might be healthy for us on this Christmas day to turn to the beginning of John's Gospel for our scripture lesson. There are no angels, no shepherds, no star, not even Mary and Joseph. Instead, there's some of the most beautiful and most important theological language that has ever been written. In the beginning was the Word, and the Word was with God, and the Word was God. He was with God in the beginning. Through Him all things were made, and without Him nothing was made that has been made. You know, in my younger days as a pastor, I would just kind of look at this text and I'd make a couple of stories come together and fit it around and kind of illustrate it, but I would never do my due diligence in truly studying it. I thought I pretty much had everything figured out. But then I underwent a major transformation in my own life, and today is not the day to talk about that transformation. Maybe someday I will. But part of my transformation showed me just how ignorant I was to simply read over a biblical text without giving it its due diligence. And so several years ago, I studied this prologue to the Gospel of John. And when I did, my mind was blown. When I said earlier that this Gospel begins with some of the most beautiful and important theological language that was ever written, I was not lying to you. And much of it centers on one word. Word. I know that sounded weird. It sounded weird when I wrote it, but so let me try to get it up and insert the Greek word. And I know what you're thinking now. You're thinking, oh, come on. It's Christmas. I came to church to sing carols, to hear the story about Jesus. I didn't come for a Greek lesson. Trust me. Trust me. You want this one. You want this one. It's not overly detailed. It's just dealing with one word. The Greek word that is usually translated word. In Greek, it's logos. And what our translations of the Bible don't show is just how nuanced this word is. There are multiple meanings and multiple understandings. I mean, some commentaries and theological dictionaries have pages upon pages written just about this one word. And don't worry, I'm not going to go into all of those. I'm just going to go into one definition. One definition of logos, word. And that definition is this: the reason for being, the reason for existence, the reason for everything. Let that sink in for just a second. Let that definition weasel into your brain. And let's read through the opening statement of that prologue that way and hear it with that definition. In the beginning was the reason for existence. The reason for existence was with God, and the reason for existence was God. He was with God in the beginning, and through Him all things were made. Without Him nothing was made that has been made. And now let's skip down to verse 14. The reason for existence became flesh and made His dwelling with us. Does that blow your mind? Does that hit you where you live? No angels, no shepherds, no wise men, no Mary and Joseph. Just the reason for all of existence. Just Jesus. You say, okay, so why is this important? Well, how does it apply to my life in this day and age? Now, I've got a few thoughts on that. You see, in the midst of my family's move to Fredericksburg, we discovered many things that kind of had been hidden away. And among those things were some very old photographs that my grandmother had actually passed on to my wife and I. And as we looked through these photographs upon discovering them, there was one picture that caught my attention. And it was of my grandfather and one of my uncles sitting in the shade on the side of my grandfather's garage. And that picture took me back to the days of my youth. Because it seemed like every Sunday after church, we'd go to my grandparents' house. Now, it may not have been as many times as my brain is recreating, but it seemed like an awful lot. And we'd go there, we'd sit down, we'd eat lunch, we'd watch the Cowboys game. And after the Cowboys game, there was cards, usually a card game, and maybe a nap or so. But then as the evening shadows began to build, we would break out the lawn chairs and we'd go out and sit in the shade of the garage, and we would do nothing. Now that's not technically true. There were a few malt beverages that were consumed, and there was a lot of talking that went on. And of course, we kids, we would play around on the farm. We'd go climb all over the farm implements and climb on the tractors and stuff like that. But the adults, they'd sit there and talk. You could say that we wasted the entire afternoon. And I got to wondering, does anybody do that anymore? I mean, at least on a regular basis. Does anyone really do that? Because it seems like we're always busy, doesn't it? It seems like we're trying to occupy every single second of our lives and fill them to the brim. It seems like we rarely take time to breathe. And I wonder if it is because we did stop and think. If we did stop and disengage from the busyness of life, we might have to stop and contemplate why we are here. When you disconnect from things, your brain starts going into those areas. We might have to wonder about this life that we are living and whether or not there is any sort of meaning to it. because they don't like the answer. And I'll tell you right now, I don't like the answer either. Because it doesn't matter if you're rich or poor. It doesn't matter whether or not you work 40 hours a week or 80 hours a week. It doesn't matter if you live in a shack or a mansion. It doesn't matter if you are a great scholar or a fool. At the end of it all, what awaits? Death. Death awaits. You can try to avoid it. You can try to run from it. You can try to stave it off. At the end of our lives, death awaits. And deep in the very recesses of our minds, this thought is always present. This thought is always haunting us. And we will do whatever we can to stave it off. We will do whatever we can to silence it. We will do whatever we can to avoid it. Because death renders all that we do, death renders all that we have worked for meaningless. And that's a very hard pill to swallow. And we don't cope with that thought too well. And I think our main coping mechanism these days is to keep ourselves as busy as possible. We stay so busy that we don't have to think about it. We stay so busy that we can convince ourselves that by staying busy, our life has meaning, our life has value, and our life has purpose. And we go along merrily until it all comes crashing down. Until our loved one or we are diagnosed with a terminal disease. Until our loved one is involved in a horrible accident. Until a grandparent or parent is placed on hospice. And death becomes a reality once again. And we're forced to cope with it. And we find it extremely difficult because it is so final. But what if it's not? What if it's not? What if there is more to reality than the reality we see right here? What if there is a reality beyond this reality? What if there is life after death? What if there is a reason for existence? What if there is something that we can look forward to beyond our years on this insignificant planet that we call the Earth? What if there is? Today we hear there is. The reason for existence took on flesh and made his dwelling with us. The reason for existence took on flesh and lived as we lived. The reason for existence took on flesh and died as we died. The reason for existence took on flesh to show us then a love that defeats death. For God so loved the world that he gave his only begotten Son, so that all those who believe in him should not perish, but have eternal life. For God sent the Son into the world not to condemn the world, but to save it, to save you, to save me. To show us that we are saved from death. And we know where that salvation comes. It comes on the cross where Jesus laid his life down for you and me. We know that the salvation comes at the cross where Jesus became the atoning sacrifice for our sin. We know that the salvation comes at the cross where Jesus pours out his life as a ransom for many. We know that the salvation comes at the cross when Jesus clothes us with his glory so that we may become children of God. And we know that we catch a glimpse of what that salvation will look like when we see the empty tomb, when we see that death is defeated, when we see that there will be resurrection from the dead and eternal life. Don't let the world hide the cross from you. Don't let all of the busyness prevent you from seeing the reason for existence. Don't get caught up in thinking that you have to live as the world lives, running yourself ragged and being busy as a bee. The reason for existence is not to stay busy. The reason for existence is not to avoid death. The reason for existence has come into the world and now lives in you and lives with you, so that you can have confidence that death is no more. So what are you going to do with all your spare time? May we sing. dance. May we celebrate and share the good news that the Word has been made flesh and is now living with us. Merry Christmas. Amen.
We hope you have been blessed by this presentation from Bethany Lutheran Church in Fredericksburg. We invite you to worship with us on Sunday mornings at 8, 10:25, or 10:30 a.m. Please like, share, and subscribe this video so that you can help spread the good news of Jesus Christ.